So we're still reviewing the home screen of UiPath Studio, what you see when you get here. It's quite busy, but we went through the sidebar on the left in our last video, and we're about to continue on towards the right. So very similar to this open button, clicking on this will open a local project. Again, it typically defaults to documents into a folder named UiPath. That's what I find. Documents / UiPath is where your initial projects will land if you don't change the defaults. Same thing, we talked a little bit about Git, TFS or SVN, if you remember, a little bit in our last video. Those are, repositories where developers can share code, for lack of a better word, and collaborate to do stuff together, right? They're common tools used in developers' world. Now, they don't really matter to you if you're not on a team, but they do they might be useful if you're working with a team of people to develop a certain project. So again, if you want to use them, this is useful for that, right? It just takes you to this team sidebar button that we discussed a bit last week. But don't pay too much attention to this. At some point in your journey, you might need to use it, but it's not now. So I'm clicking on home to return to where we were. And now we're going to move to the right side of the screen. Basically, if you want to open a new project, you've got to click one of these, right? The most basic of them is a process. Anything you develop in this environment might be a process. But every now and then, you might need to create a library. Now, what is a library? A library is something that you're going to use over and over. So you build an automation that you're going to use over and over and over and over again, right? Say, for example, you had a software in your organization, like an ERP, that every day you had to log into it. It's one of those software that it doesn't allow you to stay logged in, right? So you have to actually log into it maybe every hour or so it logs you out. So you could build something that logs in for you, as an example. But instead of you storing it as a process, you can publish it to a library so that it's reusable. And that would be the difference between, a basic process or something that you or other people can use. The only thing you will now change in that automation would be maybe for my computer, I would use my password and username. Somebody else can use it with their own password and their own username. You see what I'm saying? But it's the same thing. We all need to log into that ERP every day. So we're all going to need it. So I just built something that just put in certain things like your username and your password and it will work for you. So 1,000 of us can use the same automation because it's something we all do every day. So such things, libraries are useful for that. As a test automation, this is a template. We talked a little bit about templates in our last video, and we saw a few. And I remember I said something about Robotic Enterprise Framework being a very, very commonly used one. Now, the concept itself we'll discuss in detail later, but the principle behind it is simple. You want to use a template that it follows the same pattern, like the way things start up, the way things close down, the way things finish. They're all the same. So what you just do is you add in what is different about your own automation this time, and anyone who's like working on your project can follow what you're doing because usually it follows the same framework. But I'm not going to go into the details of what does it look like. But it's just an example. Templates are useful because developer A, me, might do things differently from you, developer B, and developer B might do things differently from developer C. And you find out that if you gave all three of us the same task, we will approach it completely differently because we're just wired differently. So those templates help us to follow a structure of doing things. And that way, if I want to continue your work or look at your work, I just intuitively understand that this is what you're doing because we're all following a certain framework. Okay. So again, you'll learn more about that. The popular kind is Robotic Enterprise Framework, but there are others like this document understanding, like when you want to read a document and use it to do something, right? There's a common set of steps you must take to be able to read a document like a human being would do. The automation can read it and make decisions based on what it finds. This is for SAP, for background process, different types. But again, depending on your use cases, you might need or not need any of these. So I would say you should expect to use process, library, test automation, Robotic Enterprise Framework very frequently in your regular development work. So now, if you want to create a process, you click process. And what you do is you give it a name. Maybe my first process, right? And then you give it a description. This is the first time I am using UiPath. Wish me luck, I'm just kidding, What you want to do is put the details of what you're trying to accomplish there, right? And then you hit create, and then that takes you, it takes you into the actual integrated development environment, which is this, right? I don't want to go too deeply into this because it's actually a very busy environment. But what I can tell you is that there are certain areas of it that you will frequently be using. To my left here, let me move this away so you can see it. I have this thing here. Yours will default to project. You see this thing that there are 3 tabs here: activities, projects, snippets, right? These are all tools you will use in the course of developing your work. So, but you have to actually click the tab. I think it defaults to project when you open it. And basically this project folder it displays the dependencies. Now again, these are the default dependencies. Sometimes, depending on what you're trying to accomplish, you will need to add other dependencies. But it's not uncommon for people to use Excel, email. There's certain basic things, functions that they believe everyone will use, and so these are installed by default. But you actually can add other dependencies. But this, like I said, is your default, right? So there are certain things. This is like a view of the project folder. You see this little icon here? If I click on File Explorer icon, it just opens the folder where the project is, and all the stuff that is displayed here. You see that entities, templates. You see entities here. You see templates here. So it's basically just showing you a different view of the folder, right? You see this main file here is here. So you're just basically looking inside a folder here, right? And then it includes the dependencies. So all these things you see there are also inside the folder. So you see project just JSON, you see main.xaml, project JSON main.xaml. So it's like showing you what's inside the project folder right here, right? But that's just one corner of the automation. If I hit on activities, you may find that I'm not sure it defaults to main sequence, but sometimes you see a different thing in the central version here, in the center of the screen here, where variables, arguments, and inputs are. Sometimes you see a different, shall we say, you have to click something to open what I have here. But to the point I was trying to make, we're still talking about the left side of the screen now, right? Activities are the things you need to do. This is where you get the things you use to build your automation from. For example, if I wanted to, like, the default thing, I mean, the first thing people usually do in the programming world is they say, build your first hello world program. So for what I did just now was I dragged something into the center here, called the message box, right? And delete one. Inside here, you always have to put text in quotes. double quotes, and you might say hello world. So this will be like writing your first program, right? If I do this, the error will disappear. I've just dragged in a message box, and if I hit this play button up here, I'm going to get a response. So let me just do that so you see. That will be your first program. We're not doing anything fancy at this time. So by default, or the first thing it does is it checks for errors. Did you do anything wrong? Compiles activities, and then it now does what you say it should do, which in this case was it says service not found. I wonder why that is. Let me try that again. So again, it will first check for errors. I might need to restart my UiPath. That usually takes a while, but I'm going to go ahead and do that. Give me a few seconds. My video is already getting a little longer than I want it to be. So I restarted UiPath, and I'm going to hit my first process again to open it. So it loads up dependencies, and this is what I was saying. Sometimes it lands on this window. You don't see some of the stuff, like we drag something in there. You have to actually click this open main window before it opens to this, right? But then when you do that, if you press play, kind of where we stop. Let's see whether it will work this time. I think. Oh, right. I see what's going on. I'm not logged into. Oh dear. So this is important. You've got to be logged into your orchestrator account, right? This is a robot error here on the bottom, like right. So I see what's going on. So I would want to like quickly log into my account, UiPath orchestrator, which is cloud.uipath.com. Like a million different accounts, right? I've got like a million different accounts. Signing with another account. So continue with email. And I think I want to use this one. I don't know that it matters, but you just need to be logged in, and your orchestrator needs to be connected, okay? So when I do this, I'll try and refresh. I need to start again. So this time when I try starting, it's asking me to sign in, which it's asking me to sign in. It looks like it's a different account is signed into here. So just hold on. I will need to log out of this. That was the account that it was actually pointing to initially that I changed from. So that would be admin. Yeah, this one. Sign in now. So I'm not, you shouldn't have any of these problems, but for whatever reason, I think I have like too many, too many like logins, and the one I was using is a bit. The account had actually been disabled. All right, it looks like they're getting their act together. So it looks like I have too many accounts on my on my. I have too many logins, and some of the ones I was trying to use to log in have been basically disabled because I haven't been using them for a while. Anyway, I'm logging back in now, and least I know which accounts work now. I had to log into like 2 different ones. I found out my licenses have been disabled for those. So my apologies for that. So it opens up like this, and you may need to click open main workflow in your own case to get to where we were, right? But what we're after is that this bottom right corner of the screen usually should be connected to your orchestrator at all points in time, okay? And that was why it didn't work. So I'm going to click that just to run your first program. And then, as usual, to check the entire automation to see whether you made any coding errors or anything like that. Which, you know, and this is our program. We just wanted a pop-up or a message box that says "Hello World," right? So that's, you know, your applications are much more complicated than that. But you get your activities from here. For example, this is an input dialog box. If you needed to use it, you drag it in here. If you needed to use a click command, you drag it in here. You know, so that's kind of how you use this, and this is where you get your commands from. So the main thing I want to pass across is that this side contains many of the activities that you're going to need to build your automation, and you move them into this canvas here in the middle to develop whatever you have in mind. So I'm going to stop here now, and we'll continue on our next video. Thank you.